How does the picture look?
Looking good.
And we got a green light for Green on Go. Oh, you are awesome, John. I also Tim Hortons gives me gift cards at times I kind of did a turnaround there, and I don't mind saying this on a live video, but Tim Hortons did a mistake and an error during the pandemic. I kind of choke when I say that word. That they weren't allowing kids that weren't jabbed camp. And so a lot of people, including thousands of people that are on here, stopped using Tim Hortons. But as I explained to my family out here, which a lot of them loved Tim Hortons, like the ice caps, is the independent stores that aren't corporate. They're owned by the leaseholders that own those stores, the businessmen in the towns and places. And I named Tim Hortons locations like Moosomin and that are made for truckers. And we should be supporting them. Plus, Tim Hortons was giving me gift cards that I give to truckers. And give, well, not just truckers, but any of the Canadian Trucking Magazine family. So over the last year or so, I think there's been not a forgiveness for corporate, sorry corporate if you're watching right now, but a forgiveness for the stores and the people that work there, the Canadians that work in the stores, the Canadians that own those stores, and may not be of the same view as what corporate did with the camp. And some of them have spoken out against that. So we can now drink Tim Hortons, and I'll do Tim Hortons coffee shop ones, and I'll give out some Tim Hortons swag. And my family here still loves me. Okay. so we promote it. Today I'm just going to promote this to about 10 different places, and then we're going to roll. I'm going to see who's on here and see if we got some people tonight that want to talk. And see, oh, that's a great picture there. Let me just share this out to my own Facebook. Sharing is caring, folks, and guess what? If you share out tonight, I'm going to take the people who are sharing tonight, and I'm going to provide to you. I'm going to go in and I'm going to pull at least one, maybe two, maybe more, for Denny's gift cards, to say thank you for sharing and caring and sharing this out. Because this is important, because today, folks, I am absolutely in awe with who I'm with today. I'm going to turn this down. Shannon Boland already says liked and shared and everything, because this is what we're looking like.
Isn't that lovely?
Yeah. And folks, I'm glad you guys can see David and Peter, because they're much better looking people than I am. And they're fantastic. And I see you all coming on and sharing. Hi, Les, Shannon, Patricia, liked and shared. Lorraine, hello, Dave and Freedom family. And Berdine, evening, Dave and Kelly. We're going, hey, Brian Wotowicz from Calgary, Alberta. Marcia Pitt down in Lethbridge right now.
Wow.
You know what's going on down there.
Yes.
Willie, good evening, Dave, from Ontario. Patricia Tarr and Keith Bazin. Thanks for coming on, everybody. You're going to be able to give some... thanks for liking and sharing. Thank you, everybody. Like and share, and do it because you love it, but also because, hey, I'm going to grease your palms and somebody's going to win, or maybe a few people might win, Denny's gift cards. And I already secured them from the beautiful Denny's that's letting us use this facility to talk to you and everything today. And I stuck them in my wallet here, and I've got 1, 2, 3 Denny's gift cards. And by the way, just a commercial for Denny's right now. If you're looking for the perfect Father's Day gift for Denny's, what about a Denny's gift card to your dad? And he can go out, he can get a Grand Slam or something like that. Or if it's a birthday, don't forget, on your birthday, you get a free Grand Slam or equal amount of money. And the reason why I'm saying that, David, I'm such a rat. I gotta confess, I'm a bad guy. Because on the day of my birthday, if I'm traveling, in the morning I have Denny's, Grand Slam. In the afternoon I have Denny's, maybe a hamburger. And at the night I have Denny's, and I have a T-bone steak. Free, and free at different Denny's on my birthday.
That's amazing.
It's the only way I can afford to eat. Because as you can see, I'm wasting away to nothing. So So I figured I'd do that plug for Denny's folks as you're coming on and you're sharing and caring. Hey, Mary Penner, Frenchie from Marathon, Ontario, and Patty from Ontario. Thanks for coming on, everybody. I'm sure you're going to enjoy Nancy Hogman from Toronto. We got people from coast to coast, from Ireland, from England, from Iceland, throughout the United States. We got our great cousins and people. And I always wear on my sleeve the Canadian and American flag with, of course, the thin blue line in between for the real police officers, the real ones that care about people. And because I always tell everybody, you can get some bad cops the same as you can get a bad waitress. We got a good one, Amanda. She's fantastic. She's fantastic, right, Amanda? I'm just telling everybody on the live video, you're the best.
Oh, you're very kind.
We don't have to tip now, right?
Of course not.
And there's the beautiful manager. She's awesome. Hi.
How are you
Good.
guys?
Very well.
I
Good to
hope
see
you
you.
guys like the food.
Very good.
Very
Thank
nice,
you.
thank you.
And didn't I say he was better looking than me?
Right.
I cannot say that. You both, all of you are beautiful.
Okay.
Thank you. You are too.
Thank you. Great people here at Denny's, folks. That's the reason we come here. We got a good spot. We can talk. We can do like a town hall here and just chat back and forth with you. And since we got people on, I'm going to allow some introductions. And I'm just going to sit here salivating with my tongue, trying to keep it in my mouth, because this man and his knowledge, I'm going to try to, like a sucker, I'm going to try
And
to...
this man too.
Yes, and Peter's knowledge. I'm going to try to suck some of that knowledge into my brain, which is pretty hard because at 66 years around the sun, my hard drive's kind of full. I haven't figured out how to dump that hard drive yet, but and the experience that's sitting at this table is phenomenal. So everything you hear, we talk about Canadian Trucking Magazine, truth. And you know I don't have a filter. Dave does, of course, because he's more eloquent than I am. He knows how to put things so that it's put right. I just blurt it out. I don't have a script or anything. You know that, but it's the truth. It's a fact-based truth. And if I ever say anything that you find out is not the truth or not a fact, send me a private message and tell me what it is. And if I got my information wrong, I will apologize immediately to the people and change it. But I do my research, and these people I've done my research on. They are awesome. So Dave, I'll let you introduce everybody. Tell them who you are and the mission statement to where you belong right now.
Well, Dave, it's so exciting to be here with you and your wonderful son and friend there. And Peter Holle and I, my name is David Leis, and we work with the Frontier Center for Public Policy, and we're really about trying to serve Canadians better with better ideas. There's a lot of bad ideas in our country, and it's almost like history repeats itself. And I think there's a significant story that is affecting everybody in terms of our country, and we need to be wise in terms of not only the facts, the truth, as you mentioned, but where do we go forward? What can we do not only as a country to turn this mess around, but as citizens? And I think that's an exciting story that we need to really dive into, and this is very important for every Canadian because it's about rights and freedoms, and it's about really the future generation. And I know that sounds cheesy, but it's true.
And you're hearing from a person who's been in an executive government position of a city, right? The chief executive officer of that city, basically, because you're the mayor, right? And you've been in very pinnacle roles in government, and you have a good idea on how a government should run and how they should off. And doesn't your I might be a bit confused here, but doesn't your organization also help government stay on track?
Yeah,
don't they reach out to you for advice?
We really try to. Peter Holle is the president, worked as the founding president, and Peter, maybe you could mention why was the Frontier Center founded so many years ago now?
Well, Frontier was all about Canada achieving, being a more excellent country. This should be the richest country in the world. We should have the highest standard of living. But as you know, we have lots of bad public policy. And, you know, Conrad Black basically said when he was younger, Canada was number 2 in terms of standard of living, behind the United States.
Yep.
Today we're 26, and we're slipping and sliding down the ranks. And again, it has all to do with bad public policy, as David says. Okay, there's smart public policy and there's really dumb public policy. And the last few years, we've seen lots of dumb public policy.
A lot of it.
And the pandemic was a catastrophic public policy.
Yes.
Okay? It was the worst fiasco in history, essentially. Okay, if you do cost-benefit analysis, lots of numbers showing that the costs were. I remember 165 times the benefit. It's like dropping an atomic bomb on your economy. And that's what the politicians did.
Yeah.
Yep.
And a lot of people were hurt, a lot of people were killed. And Frontier, I guess, if I had to pat ourselves on the back, not many organizations jumped on the pandemic, the so-called pandemic. And we were on it from the beginning. It is a disaster, and we can't, you know, sort of shuffle it under the rug. We need to examine it and understand what happened. It can never happen again. And I'll get controversial here, but people responsible should be held accountable.
Absolutely.
And you know, including losing jobs, and some should be going to jail.
Yes, I agree. And the thing is, there were great documents out there, like the Great Barrington Declaration,
That's right.
which Sweden followed, right? Which Sweden looked at and said, wait a minute, are you kidding me? We're not gonna kill our economy and our people and everything.
Close
else.
all the schools down,
Yeah.
and you know, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And no, it was a disaster. It was a man-made disaster, and thank God we had the trucker convoy because it broke the back of what was going on.
Absolutely.
That was a breakthrough moment.
It was important all around the world. Okay.
Right around the world.
Yeah.
It set Canada again as we have been a leader in so many ways in freedom, going back to 1944, going through. Canada has been the savior and a beacon of hope. And then people turned to Canada and said, what's going on with Canada?
Yeah.
They were like up in the top 10 of countries people wanted to go. Now we're not even in the top 10.
Exactly.
And our debt per ratio for our people in the G7, we're the highest debt per ratio for people. Man, and they're just pumping more and more money. And I'm going to be controversial because I don't have a filter. But talk about money. We got people from Africa, we got people from Australia, we got firefighters coming to help out in these wildfires, which quoting the Premier of Nova Scotia saying that he believes they were all set in Nova Scotia, all set fires, but where's the Ukraine? With all the money that's being sent to Ukraine, and I can say this because my kids are half Ukrainian dads. Angie's Ukrainian, 3rd generation. I love Ukrainians. I think they're fantastic. But with Australia and Africa, the United States coming to help, where's Ukraine?
Yeah.
It's a lot closer than Australia and Africa. Shouldn't Zelensky give up his acting job for a day or two and send some of their firefighters or troops here to help fight our fires, to help Canada? I mean, there's a guy in Ottawa sending millions of dollars someplace over there, and there's nothing coming back.
Yeah.
I just figured I'd throw that as I was thinking about that earlier in my mind, that we've got Africa, Australia, United States running to help us with this fire pandemic, should we call it?
Yeah.
Or as the Trudeau yelled the other day in
cause.
Parliament, he says, the country's burning down, the country's burning down. Well, how do you know?
Yeah, exactly. But Davey, I mean, I think your work needs to be commended. It's amazing, the magazine, what kind of information you share with people. And I was so impressed that we could meet each other at the National Citizens Inquiry, and you gave coverage to that.
Yes.
Because that's part of telling the story of the impact that these kinds of policy decisions that are made by powerful people in government, the impact they make on people's lives.
Yes.
Whether it's people of every age, and I would say that what's very disappointing is that we had an emergency plan at, I believe, at every province and certainly at the federal level as well.
Yes.
About a possible
And the
pandemic.
military.
And
the
the
military
military
had the plan.
And we did not follow it.
No.
And this is a head scratcher because those were good plans.
Yeah.
And I have had the privilege of going through emergencies. And emergencies, what do? Beyond assessing the situation, you gather leaders around a table like this, and you make decision making in a problem-solving team. So that if you make one decision on your end, it doesn't impact Peter over here. Like, you work together. And they didn't do that. So you'd be shutting down schools. You could go to Walmart, but you couldn't go to church.
And
it's
small
bizarre.
businesses,
Yeah.
barbershops, and people that can
Yeah.
barely make their rent as it can be,
Yeah.
and they're shutting them down. The corner store has to shut down, but Costco and Walmart
Exactly.
and Superstore you
Yeah.
can go into.
And the punchline from our point of view, and you referenced that Great Barrington Declaration,
Yes.
which was a brilliant document, was actually in many respects stating a clear reference to the best practices, the fancy word that there is a way in public health to deal with these kinds of situations. And they didn't follow that. And
No.
they kept asserting that there was a consensus among public policy people and health officials that there was this consensus. No, there wasn't. There was a raging debate that, no, we were going down the wrong path. But they
Yes.
tried to censor that. We know through the Twitter files, we know through all kinds of information now that what we had long suspected is that there's been a very, heavy-fisted effort to censor on a lot of basic truths. And that's a huge problem when you don't allow for open discussion and debate. That's a very important part of a healthy society. But that's a sign of tyranny.
Yes.
Okay? And so this issue is related to so many other issues
Oh,
that
yes.
has a very dark side to it. And I don't, honestly, I'm a very, optimistic person. But it's not just our nation, Canada, but in many ways the West is in big trouble, I believe, on a lot of fronts. And there's a lot of evidence that supports that. And it's not just the economic, it's almost like the culture is being attacked, family is being undermined. So these are all interrelated issues that show that we need to wake up, and this is the challenge, I think, to citizens, is to wake up and act and do what they can do.
Yes, and get the right information, find out what you can do,
Yeah.
and you're talking about the inquiries, and we're talking about the National Citizens Inquiry, where David did a fantastic job testifying. We, of course, did that live, and we shared it, and we shared it again. And you know what? I may share it again on Throwback Thursday because I loved his testimony. But more importantly, we're faced right now, and a lot of this is distraction. So be careful, folks. A lot of it is distraction, what's going on with these special interest groups and everything else. A lot of distraction going on. But right now, Johnson, who that right from the beginning I said shouldn't have been there, director in the Trudeau Foundation and everything else. But they're saying, what should we do? Well, guess what? The National Citizens Inquiry already showed what you can do. You get an inquiry and you get citizens. I'd nominate David to sit on that for one thing, right there, with your knowledge and executive experience. It's not like you're a person who, and not to demean anybody, but you're not just a person that's slumped in your parents' basement at 30 years old on the computer and drinking Bud Light. You're a person who...
Definitely not Bud Light.
No, you're a person who's...
It's on sale, by the way.
Exactly.
It was fire
Fire
sale.
sale.
We never bought
That's
it.
right. Maybe they could take those cases of Bud Light and use them to firebomb the wildfires.
Yeah.
But the fact is, you have been an executive position as a mayor of a city and an executive position in politics. You could sit on that board and you have the knowledge and background to smell, let's say, the malarkey from the whatever.
Right.
And if you had a committee from across Canada Like across Canada, folks. Get somebody from BC, get somebody from the East Coast, get some of them great Newfoundlanders, Leis. Get people on that committee. And you know what? You can sit 20 people on a committee. When the United States host and they chair their committees, you see how many people sit on those committees sometimes? I saw one that had almost 50 people sitting on that committee, from senators to congressmen to mayors. If you've got people like that sitting on that committee and saying, what's going on? Now again, this is one distraction, the Chinese money going in and controlling the politics. But let's cut them out. One at a time. Let's have some wins. Getting rid of Johnson is a win. And going back to the actions that was taken during the, I call it the War Measures Act, because that's what it was, when they interned all those poor Chinese citizens from BC, 20,000 of them during World War II. They used the War Measures Act to intern them in Canada. It's a black eye for us. We don't talk about it. We should, because history repeats itself, Peter said, right? So in any case, when the police on guard and people like that were getting depositions from Health Canada officials, they never said to close the schools. You know, all the things saying for Health Canada said this, Health Canada, all of the people that testified said, no, we didn't. We didn't give that advice. Where did that advice come from?
Well, you know, one of the things I would observe, in my opinion, is that there's so many decisions made around COVID-19 that were not based on incisive policy. You know, when you do policy, there's some really important principles that guide you in terms of what is good policy. And I'm sorry to say, but the evidence points to a lot of decisions that were made that were based on optics, the appearance of wanting to be seen as doing the right thing, and doing it from kind of a communications point of view, and that's wrong. That's not how you govern a country, and so that's incredibly concerning. It's very damaging, and I would say, just to get back to David Johnston, I worked with David Johnston in a different capacity years ago, and I think he was a really fine fellow. But I was really sad that he took on that appointment right from the very beginning. And I'll tell you why. Because I think he did a very good job, I think, as a Governor General.
Yes.
And in other roles. But I will tell you this. The issue of Chinese influence in Canadian society, let alone other parts of the West and beyond, is a very strategic issue.
Yes.
And I think people, in my own experience working with different Chinese organizations, is much more profound in our society than you realize. Mm-hmm. So if you want to deal, like, that's a big issue, is how Canada relates to China. And that should be, and I like your idea, Dave, that it should be a fairly open discussion.
Yes.
There needs to be security professionals involved, but there needs to be different leaders from quarters of our society. The amount of influence in our universities is profound. Oh, absolutely. I will never forget years ago having a conversation with a good friend of mine who's a senior intelligence person. And this was many years ago, where I asked, what would be your biggest challenge? And he said, oh, that's easy, Dave. The biggest challenge by far is dealing with Chinese espionage. Mm-hmm. And if you look at this strategically, when you look at our economy, one of the most important things is our intellectual property. That's the family jewels. Yes. So if you don't protect that, you spend all these years, time and money and ingenuity developing this, because that leads to your next product that will be successful to your standard of living. And if you get rid of that, then what future do our kids have? Right. So we should be all over this. And if we can trade with China, great, but it's got to be fair. And that's the whole story. And I could talk about this for a long time, but this is a very important issue. And it can't be politicized. Right. It goes beyond any party. Yes. It goes to the welfare of every Canadian.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, I'm 100%. And as I say, I was disappointed that it was put on one person's shoulder, David Johnson, and also that he was compromised being a director in the Trudeau Foundation, and money had taken there. He should have taken a step back and said, no, I've had a distinguished career. I've been the Governor General of Canada. I'm stepping
Yeah.
back. You find someone else
Right.
to fall
Yeah.
in here.
Exactly.
And
Well, and David, it reminds me of it raises really tough questions, and I don't mean to personalize this at all, but what are people thinking? Like if you're on that foundation and you're getting involved in decisions that have a significant bearing on that government, don't you think you have a conflict of interest possibly, or let alone an appearance of one? This is really, it begs the question, to what extent these elites are just out of touch, like they're in a bubble
Right.
when it comes to these issues. And I find that really disappointing.
Yes.
Big time.
Absolutely. Well, the problem is it's come to a powerful head in the last couple of years, where the elites have come out of the dark,
Yeah.
and they've come out and they've said,
Right.
you know, here we are.
Yeah.
Here's the book, The Great Reset.
Exactly.
Here's this. And some elites have come forward and said, yeah, we need to decrease the population
Yeah.
by this much. And they don't mind saying it now.
Right.
Because nobody's saying, what did he just say?
Yeah.
He wants to decrease our population.
Yeah. Well, okay,
You
so
know?
this is where people, I think, need to realize that there's a real divide going on. I think you have, like I've always believed, this is my personal opinion, that every human being is made in the image of the divine. Every human being is very special. And no, animals are not equal to human beings, although animals are precious creatures as well.
Yes.
And it's almost like you have the emergence of a kind of a secular ideology and assumption that human beings are the problem in the world.
No.
I mean, it's frightening. So that means that unfortunately so many people, some, I don't want to generalize, believe that human beings are not precious.
Right.
And that they are to be used.
Yep.
And to be used for any ends that people want to achieve. And I think that's a huge problem in our country today, let alone our world.
And they're forgetting our history. Because if you look back to the history, and we go back to the French Revolution and
Yeah.
times like that, England and the United Kingdom got a real scare when they saw that elites were being brought
That's
into
right.
guillotines and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they went, what should we do?
Exactly.
And they went, we need to make sure we feed the peasants
Yeah.
enough.
Right.
So that there's a welfare system, they got clothes, they got a place
Yeah.
to live, they've got food, and if they're happy, they won't rebel. Because look at France, it went too far.
Right.
And all the elites got guillotined because the people turned around and said, wait a minute, there's
Yeah.
more of us than them.
Well, you've really got to pay attention to serving Canadians
Yes.
and realizing that our country is very precious. It's unique
Yes.
in the world. When you look at the world, half the world are either slaves or they're serfs.
Yes.
And this is a reality therapy. You've got to be in Canada. You've got to realize that our rights and freedoms that are very precious. So that means the rule of law is important.
Yes.
No one is above the law, even the king, the queen, or the prime minister, or the premier, anybody. But also, you have the reality that no one should be under the law, and that means that you have rights and freedoms to speak up. That's how we get at truth. We have good debate.
Yes.
But those things are all under attack. So you look at Frontier, we're very concerned about bills like C11
Right.
to regulate and censor the internet. That's outrageous.
Exactly.
Right? And then you have in this country a federal government that's funding some 2,000 media outlets.
Yes.
2,000 of them.
Yeah.
So, and they have to get on board then with covering news in a certain way. Otherwise, they don't get the money.
Yeah.
This is outrageous. We need a very healthy media. So that's why what you're doing, Dave, among other independent media, is very, very important. And I would challenge Canadians to support independent media with their money.
Right.
Don't support a newspaper. Like, you know, in Winnipeg, we'd say, well, we used to have a newspaper here. We used to,
Yeah.
but we don't anymore,
Yeah.
among other communities. And it's
Right.
frightening, because they're not really reporting the news. They're making the news.
Yes.
And by reporting, I mean looking at both sides of the story and trying to get at the deeper story. Where have they been
Yep.
on so many of these issues? They've been missing in action. And so this is an issue where I just encourage citizens that this is an important thing they can do, is to support programs like yours, among others, and put their money where their mouth is.
Yeah. And even, you know, when you talk about media, And you talk about funding. It's not even so much the funding as the baseball bat, because the people here who've been on for a long time knows what happened to me a number of years ago. With printing the magazine at Christmas, I've always had Merry Christmas.
Okay.
And I put some sort of thing on the front. Well, a couple of years ago, I got a letter because I am registered media. I got a PMA number. You know, they're talking about this new thing about registering. It's always been to register, that you register with CRTC and everybody, that you're registered media. I have media pass and everything else. They sent me a letter saying that what I'm doing by putting Merry Christmas on my magazine is offending people. And if I carry on, they will take off my PMA number and ban my publication from public places.
Yeah.
And I read this out to the people. I showed them the letter, and I said, here's who we need to phone.
Yes,
this
exactly.
is what we need to do.
Yeah.
And this was sent to me in October because I knew December. My magazine December said Merry Christmas on it.
Okay, so Dave, this is an outrageous example, in my opinion, is that there's a kind of a mindset, a number of elites, if you will. A lot of this toxic crap comes out of universities.
Yes.
The bowels of the universities. And it begs the issue, why are we funding them with taxpayers' money?
Yes.
And so the issue is this. It's like they're trying to undermine very important traditions that have great meaning for most of our country.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that we don't have other traditions as well. If you're of other faiths, that's great, or no faith, that's great. But part of what makes our society brilliant is that we have shared values of an ability to respect the rule of law, freedom of speech, the traditions of Canada, but also a tolerance for other points of view.
Yes.
So what if you acknowledge the obvious that during, what is it called, December 25, it's called Merry Christmas?
Yeah.
Like, this is absurd. So we're in a situation where people need to speak up, and you, I think, made a brilliant point. They need to call their elected official. And this is something that, in all fairness, has changed a bit, because a lot of governments are following their nose when it comes to medias, like polls, like popular opinion polls and communications. The citizens have more power than they realize if they choose to speak up.
Right.
So a lot of people ask us at Frontier, Peter and I, all the time, are you concerned about where our country's going? Absolutely. Do you have any hope that we can turn it around? Absolutely. If. The condition is if people speak up.
Absolutely.
And as a former elected official, I know the power of how people, if you would get like 5, 10 calls or letters, people would pay attention to that, because there's so much. It's hard. You're working day to day. A lot of people are a little bit in a bubble, and you want feedback, and that feedback is invaluable. So don't underestimate the power that you as a citizen have.
Absolutely. An example of that, folks, is Brandon was doing a policy the other day, the Brandon City Council.
Oh, yeah.
They got 148 emails.
Wow.
148 emails out of, I don't know, what is there, 100,000 people living in Brandon?
Yeah.
The Brandon City Council changed their policy because they received 148
Very
emails.
good.
But in one way it wasn't good, because that 148 emails, in my opinion, was probably from a target group, because what it was is they were going to remove books from children, inappropriate books, in my opinion, from kids seeing them in kindergarten to grade 6.
Right.
They were going to leave them in the middle schools, but take them out of the elementary schools. And as I said, 148 emails and that went crazy about it, and they changed policy, and they left those books in there.
So you got to realize that in a lot of development of public policy within government, it's shaped by special interests.
Absolutely.
Special interests feed off the system, both in terms of money and power.
Yes.
And I get that. We understand. People, it takes a lot of energy to be activated.
Yes.
But the danger is that those special interests then run the show, and what they end up with is results that don't serve everybody as Canadians. And that's the problem. Yeah. Our politics are really dominated by special interests. So now, as citizens, we need to wake up and realize, you know what? The sexualization of children is totally inappropriate.
Exactly.
We need to focus on ABCs and helping our children succeed in their their job development, their skills, so we can
Educate them in
compete.
schools.
Oh my gosh, wouldn't that be great? Educate students.
That's what schools
Yeah.
should be.
So you're saying no drag queen story?
No
hour?
drag queens, no. And you know what? And this has been articulated at Frontier for years. If anything, the solution is to give the money to parents, and they choose where they send their kids, not to a bureaucracy. And this is about the theme of empowerment. You need to empower not the bureaucracies, in all fairness to them, and we need good bureaucrats. You need to empower citizens.
Exactly.
That's the key.
Exactly.
And that's a seminal public policy point that if you listen carefully to a lot of groups, they don't get.
No.
Because they're actually special interests.
Yes, they are.
They're wanting to disempower the citizen because they believe, Dave, that they're right. They're the good and the great, and they are the ones in charge. And you know what? You're kind of stupid, and we're going to run your life. How patronizing and dangerous is that?
Absolutely.
It's frightening.
Yeah.
And if you look at every key policy area, that's kind of what's behind the background in many respects. I don't want to overly simplify, but who in their right mind thinks that they think they know best and can run your life?
Exactly.
How patronizing is that?
Yep. And especially parents with their children. I can't even let my son drive a car without signing permission. I can't let him go to a school trip without signing his permission. But suddenly, if they want to do something that is of a sexual content with our kids, they can do it without parents' consent. And David said something very important here. We have power, not only in our vote, but in our money.
Yes.
Budweiser is a good example of that. They got a really good spanking when they changed from what they had been doing for many, many years to a small group. And of course, to, unfortunately, a fraudster, in my opinion. And I say, in my opinion, a fraudster that did a fraud, which Budweiser fell for. And not only did it disgust the consumers of Budweiser, but it disgusted the people who are truly believe in a certain lifestyle, and suddenly they got a poser up there as an example, and it was disgusting. But Dave can tell you, your money and your purchasing power and what you buy and where you shop and where you vote can control our future.
It's a huge deal. And I think there's another side to this, and that is that we want to encourage good corporations to be competitive, to stick to their knitting. If they are a brewer, why don't you just brew a good product, damn it, and stick to your knitting? You don't need to wade into all this other nonsense, this woke ideology, because all of that is really about distracting us from the real issue, which should be about education, providing excellent health care, a future for our kids, and not dragging down and becoming a third world country in terms of ultimately our standard of living.
And
this is a great
kids
country.
against parents.
Yes.
Turning kids against parents.
Sick.
My kids, I was so proud of them when they were in their school. A van came along during the pandemic to give people vaccines.
Yeah.
And I'm not an anti-vaxxer. They've got measles and everything else. But the teachers were telling my kids who phoned me, and actually my son Andrew, I read his letter out here to a live video, which he wrote to the principal, and he got in trouble for writing it. But they had taken him aside, and I believe John as well, and said, your parents don't have to know. You just can go with your classmates and you can go get this vaccine, as they called it.
Wow.
And my kids were not intimidated. They turned around and said, we'll ask our parents what they think. Well, what do you think?
Yeah, exactly.
And they said, we're a child. We're learning.
Yeah.
And we're learning from our parents. And I don't think our parents wants us to take an unproven vaccine.
Exactly.
And so they didn't. But the teachers got upset about it.
Yeah.
Okay. Teachers got upset about it. The principal did, and my one younger son, Andrew, wrote him a scathing letter. You know, Shannon said something on the heels of what you said. Maria Hebert's, by the way, in the house from Camp Hope.
Oh,
Maria
very
and
good.
Walter.
Very good.
Great people. Shannon says we all need to be a special interest, we the people.
I like that.
That should be our special interest group, we the people.
And do
well
not be
said,
afraid.
Shannon.
Do not be afraid.
And Travis from Calgary saying, you're all talking to family that already believes you. Need to talk to the ones that are underneath the rock. Absolutely, and that's why we got great people like your group. Thank you for founding such a great group. And your testimony at the National Citizens Inquiry. And folks, we should have a vote, and he should lead the next inquiry into the Chinese thing and everything else. And don't believe somebody who is a first minister in Ottawa who says, guess what, Canadians? If you donate money to fight these fires, the government of Canada will match your donations. Wait a minute, the government of Canada, that is our money.
Yeah, exactly.
That's already our money. What do you mean, give money and you're going to match it with our money? Like,
it's insane. So
and he doesn't understand that. He has no concept of what finance or money is.
Well, the dangers, the federal government, we would criticize it from a policy point of view, that it has no financial guardrails. It has no incisive goals on bringing their deficit to a close. You can't spend more money.
Oh yeah, it'll balance itself.
It'll balance itself.
Haven't you
How
listened
absurd is that? I've never heard that.
First minister in Canada there?
No,
He
this is
says it
destruction.
balances
It's
itself.
almost like you're running down your economy and the culture of your society, when in fact we know that we need a stronger nation and we need to be wise and courageous when it comes to this. And we really think this is a very important time for our country.
Very
and if
important.
we don't get that, we could be in deep, deep trouble. We already are.
Yeah. And the convoy showed you, folks, the Freedom Convoy 2022 showed you that Canadians can get together, they can raise the Canadian flag, and they can say, no, we aren't going to take this anymore. And wake up the world, and even though the mainstream, I was going to use another word, stream medium and that, media would not cover it. We all know. Every household knows. Now, unfortunately, some of them thinks that it was terrorists and dirtbags and misogynistic people and stuff like that, where we know they were heroes.
You know, it's amazing, Dave. One of the revelations for me was, and I remember that time, as everyone does, when the convoy was, coming across the west. And one of the groups that we work with closely is the Miracle Channel, and they sent a news crew to Ottawa to cover it.
Nice.
And it was a revelation because they would contrast what the mainstream media was reporting, and they were on the ground looking for issues and following up with people right on the ground.
Yeah.
And it was the opposite. It was stunning as a contrast. And the problem is that a lot of Canadians are in this information bubble.
Yes.
So we need to break through that awareness, and we need to challenge each other to speak up, not be afraid, always be respectful, but to be direct, and not be afraid to fight for our country. We have one of the greatest countries in the face of the world.
Yes.
But we could lose it all if we're on the path that we're on.
Absolutely.
So, we're grateful for the truckers, because I think that was a form of action that was a wake-up call.
And needed to be. It needed to be.
And I will tell you this, one of my great friends who's Dr. Martin Kulldorff, one of the authors of the Great Barrington Declaration, he's a Swede, spoke so eloquently about how that truckers' convoy followed the science.
Yes.
In contrast to the government.
Yes.
They followed the science down the road. And they were the ones who inspired not just many Canadians, but people around the world. And that's a great story.
And by the way, the Great Barrington Declaration, who was signed by these top people who know what they're talking about, it has now been signed by close to 1 million people. Google it. The Great Barrington Declaration. Google it and look and see the top epidemiologists and people like that who signed this, and scientists, and have signed it. Close to 1 million people have signed that declaration. So it's and Sweden followed it. It was so good. And we've got people out here, folks. We got people like your foundation that you know what's going on.
And Dave, I got to tell you, if you want to learn more about this, look at the website. We welcome feedback. Frontier Center for Public Policy. We want people to be more informed and follow really common sense when it comes to public policy. And speaking of Sweden, the numbers are in. The numbers are stunning in terms of how their costs and mortality rates just outshine anyone.
Yes.
Now when it comes to the West. It's very impressive. They went the right route.
Yes, they did.
And of course, I'll throw in Frontier Center receives no government money.
Yeah.
Thank
It's
goodness.
independent.
It's a key.
And that's why it actually kind of scared of us, because we can say it as it is.
Yeah.
And again, it's an important, we're something that also send us your money if you want.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons I made sure to bring this out to you. And I'm going to bring it out to you in print, because if we get shadow banned or any problems, guess what? I still print a magazine, and I put them out throughout North America at your local truck stops and Denny's restaurants and Tim Hortons restaurants and places right across Canada, and right from Pembina, North Dakota to the great state of Texas, right to Laredo. I let you know where they are in print. You can read it. They can't take that away from us. And back in the old days, when freedom fighters and we the people had to get the message out, it was by word of mouth, it was by print, it was by letting people. Now we've got social media, but as you say, they're trying to shut that down. And I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to ask you one question. What do you think of the fact that Elon Musk took over Twitter and opened Twitter up?
Okay, I think it's a great move. Elon Musk, I think, was surprised in his own words that he bought a crime scene.
Yes.
Because he inherited the information and the proof, the receipts, if you will.
Yes.
That the part of the, I would say, frankly, the corrupt state was all in there. You had FBI, a whole variety of agencies, and this is not at all tinfoil hat things. This is the receipts. You can see,
The
and they
smoking
used
gun.
the smoking guns, and they used independent journalists to show the level of control, not just over Twitter, but the entire social media. I remember when the internet came into being, as so many others do, it was quite exciting. This whole free flow of information. Those days are long gone, as people cleverly try to shut down and censor the search algorithms, right?
Yes.
And they shadow ban, they censor so many things. What government in power? It's always, look, I ask you the question, are the good guys ever the ones who seek to censor information?
No, never.
Never in history. So we have to keep this firmly in our heads and realize what's at stake. Because if we lose that information, we're done.
Absolutely.
I think your audience also knows that Elon Musk is half Canadian.
Yes.
His mother's from Regina.
Yep.
I'm from Regina.
Oh, nice. From the Queen City.
And we also know that Elon Musk donated money to the trucker convoy.
Yes, he did.
Isn't that something?
$23,000 or
Yes.
something.
I thought it was close to $1 million, wasn't it? Yeah, $1
Wouldn't that
million.
be great?
Because that's
Yeah.
what caused it to bounce.
Yeah.
Because originally it was like
Right.
into 10,000, 11. Suddenly it was 1,100,000, and the
But
connections
he
I
got,
had.
he got behind the trucker convoy.
Absolutely.
And to me, that's very impressive.
He was behind freedom,
Yeah.
and there were a lot of people that were politicians that did get. I rode with the People's Convoy in the United States, and Ted Cruz rode with it.
Wow.
And in my video with the People's Convoy, Ted Cruz stopped the car and said hi to us, and he said, "You're Canadian?" Because I had the Canadian
Yes.
flag in that.
Yeah.
I said, "Yes, I am."
Right.
And he said, "Great job." And I went, "Oh my God, I just met Ted Cruz." And he's riding in a truck
Great.
in the
Yeah.
convoy.
Right.
So I was very proud to be able to run with the People's Convoy. It's too bad there was personalities clashed and it failed, unlike the Canadian convoy. But they still did a good try, and they did have thousands and thousands of trucks.
And I would say, in light of all this talk about challenges, and they are very real,
Yes.
it has been very heartwarming to meet people like you, Dave, and so many others. Like, you think of your audience engaging, and we've all met hundreds of really fine people that aren't just about talk, but they're about action.
Yes.
Action, 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 and they're doing, and that's very heartwarming. And I tell you, in Canada, I think our Canadian culture, I think a lot of Canadians are really amazing people. They're generally generous.
Yes.
They're kind. They are hardworking. And I know I'm not trying to idealize Canadians, but Canadians are generally really great people.
Yes.
But we have some really bad policy.
Yeah.
And so let's grab a hold of this, and we've got a community that's coalescing around, in many ways, the foundational things and values and principles that allowed this country to be what it is. It's really an exciting story that's unfolding now.
It is. It's just, it's awesome to see Canadians. And I want to just say, from all these distractions and everything, Canadians, from our inception, has always been colorblind. We've always been acceptance of everybody.
Yeah.
But lately in Canada, there are people that are causing divides.
Well, they seek to divide.
Yeah,
They're about
seek to
hatred.
divide.
They're not about unity.
Yep.
The Canadian flag is good enough to unite everybody.
Yep.
We don't need other flags
Yep.
because we already accept people
Exactly.
regardless of your background. And when it comes to your sexual proclivities, keep it to yourself and be an adult, but don't sexualize the kids.
No.
And let's focus on education.
Leave the
It's
kids
really not
alone.
complicated.
Yep. Yeah. Everybody knows who's above 30. They know that when they were a kid, they had no idea. When they were a teenager, they had no idea. In fact, Dr. Laura, who is a writer in the United States and a talk show person, wrote a book saying, don't get married till you're 28. Because until you are in your 20s and 28, you still don't know who you are. You're still developing mentally, physically, emotionally, and everything else. And anybody out here who's on this, who's over 28, knows that. You know that what you thought when you were a teenager and what you thought now. So we're going to turn around and tell kids from kindergarten to grade 8 or even to high school who they are or who they should be. No. If they're having issues, we had guidance counselors when we went to school, and the parents came in.
Absolutely.
And they talked to them. And if they did not give them the right direction and they felt not, when they became adults, they went their own way.
Exactly.
But right now, and I was at a grocery store the other day that sold cannabis and that, and it had a sign on the door saying, you cannot enter that store unless you're 19. Because they're selling cannabis and that. I thought the legal age was 18. I went and asked the owner, 19? They said, that's the sign we got to put on because we're selling cannabis in our grocery store here. And wait, till you're 19, you can't cannabis, you can't alcohol, you can't drive till you're 16 or 14 in Alberta. You can't do all, and even then you need your parents' permission.
Exactly.
But we can take and put people in classrooms of kids to tell them they're confused or this is what they should do or that. Leave the kids alone.
Exactly.
Leave them educate the kids. Let the family deal with it. And if they decide to go whatever direction they want, guess what? Canada's a free country.
Right on.
And I respect whatever you decide. I put on 2 uniforms in my life so that you could tell me you hated me or you can do what you want. But don't tell other people what they have to do.
Right.
That is the simple fact.
I would vote for you, Dave.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
There's too many skeletons in my closet.
Okay.
I would never get elected. You wouldn't want to be on the record of voting for me.
Exactly.
My closet's so full of skeletons, I think it's a warehouse.
Okay. Yeah, well, no one is perfect. And
My
that's
wife
okay.
says that to me all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even when I checked my lottery ticket, it said you're a loser. So. But you know what, folks? As long as you're on here and we're talking and you're sharing this out and it's reaching millions of people and we're spreading the great word, it makes me feel like a winner chicken dinner. It really makes me proud to be a Canadian, proud of my American cousins, proud of everybody overseas that is watching, proud of anybody who is spreading the conversation. And I just want to say one more thing. If you're sharing this or you're afraid to share this on your Facebook because somebody might get offended, get them off your Facebook. Get them off your Facebook. You know, just get them off your Facebook. You never need drama in your life. You never need hate in your life. And you need to believe what you believe. And the thing you need to believe is everybody has rights. Everybody. Everybody's lives matter. And not any special groups. We don't have any special days. I don't get a white heterosexual day where I have a parade. I march downtown saying, I've got 12 kids. Don't tell my wife I just left it.
It's gone to a month, now it's going to a season.
I know.
Crazy.
And flags flying in Ottawa and on everything, and in Walmarts and stores like that. They've got these displays and everything else. Come on. People know what they want to do. And you know what? Whatever you want to do in the privacy of your home is your business. But do not push that on kids. We don't need public. We don't need to be separated more. It's a separation. It's a divide. Having these months for this or having this group or that is a divide. So we keep our eye off the ball that our society as we know it is trying to disappear to where we go back 150 years ago, where we are slaves to the elites. And we do what they say or we get imprisoned or killed. I mean, that's the way it was 200 years ago.
There's been a long history of civil war and people rising up. You think of the signing of the Magna Carta and the need to really assert that no one is above the law, including the king or queen, the prime minister or the premier.
And I'm going to put you on the spot again because I like putting David on the spot, especially since I'm so interested in his opinion on these things. Do you think that the American Revolution was maybe the start of telling people that you deserve to be free and freedom?
No, it was not.
No?
The American Revolution was a very exciting time within that particular country of where those assertions were made. But if you look carefully at all those thinkers and documents from Jefferson to, there's a whole series of them, they clearly came out of the great Anglo-Saxon tradition of thinkers, including John Locke.
Yes.
And among others. And so the tradition of freedom, ironically, has a long history of that period after the Roman period in the UK, and it developed in many respects imported as well from the forests of Germany, where there was a particular tradition of the rule of law, a respect for Parliament, where the chiefs were chosen by the people, and that history became very, very important over that 1,000 years and was asserted. But like every society, and the UK is a good example, the ebb of freedom goes up and down.
Yes.
And the tyranny of King George was a problem. Mm-hmm. And it was a problem so much so that a colony named the United States banded together and really a ragtag of courageous revolutionaries overthrew that made that revolution apparent. So we can learn not only from the American Revolution, but the roots of that even go back earlier. And so that's a very exciting story.
It is.
It's a big story.
A big
the
story.
Magna Carta.
Yes, absolutely.
You have to have us back, Steve.
Yes, we're going to have
I
to.
am so sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
You just need to close the till.
Okay. Can you bring me the bill? Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
And
do you want to use the machine? Or
yes, I'll use the machine.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I'll do that.
So we're going to close this down. They just need to close out the till, folks. But it is so exciting having you
Thank
here.
you. It's an honor to be here.
And you're asked to speak at so many different things, so many different events. And thank you so much for starting this organization, because without organizations like this and things like the National Citizens Inquiry and that, how are people supposed to know?
Exactly.
People are feeling lost. There are a lot of people out there, like Travis said about being under the rock, where he said, like, where here, John, I'll let you look after it here, where he said, which one do I want to use? I'll use this one here. Thank you. Make sure to leave a big tip for it. And where they turn around and they and I sort of lost where. Oh yes, where Travis said where you got to tell the ones that are under a rock. Well, they've been so brainwashed by the media, so brainwashed by somebody misleading them in Ottawa right now, and everything else that they don't know. But there's organizations like yourself and that where you supported the National Citizens Inquiry and that, where people got to hear the truth.
Yeah.
People got to come out and see what the truth is.
And it's a permanent record, and you can go to the website, and there's 200 hours that you can watch anytime.
And I recommend you do. And you know what? You don't even have to watch. If you're driving or you're on your lawnmower cutting your grass right down that, put your earbud in and listen to it.
Yeah, there's astounding stories, not only from, quote, experts, but also from citizens. And what I was very moved by the whole thing. It was a very emotional experience, as you know, Dave. You were right there, covering it to your credit. But we need to examine the facts and evidence, and we also need to listen closely to other Canadians. And I know there's a debate even today, but it's like every key assertion that was made by our governments was wrong.
Yes.
Like, it wasn't just mask wearing, it was about the efficacy of lockdowns. It was about the efficacy of those vaccines.
Yes.
The data is coming in. At every age group, the efficacy of those vaccines doesn't seem to be apparent.
No.
It's ridiculous.
Yep.
And then we have this whole asinine situation where we realize that the amounts of money that was thrown out to people was absurd.
Oh,
and our next kids are going to be paying it off for generations. It's wrong.
And it's still bleeding. It's still bleeding.
It's crazy.
1 million here, 10 million here,
Yeah.
and as Canadians we can't.
No.
We can't. It has
Yeah.
always been the fact that they've turned around and taken, which was a rich country like Canada, and reach into the pockets of the poor
Right.
and say they're giving it to a poor country, but putting it in the pockets
That's
of the
right.
rich. Because where is that money going? I'm seeing the great Ukrainian
Right.
people that are
Yeah.
coming to Canada, and they're fleeing to Canada. And they aren't coming here with a hockey sock
Yeah,
full of money.
exactly.
They weren't getting any money in Ukraine. And you know what? Ramping up war and investing in weapons. Well, who are the weapons manufacturers that are making the money
Yeah.
from manufacturing these weapons?
You really have
war
to-
is a money machine. It always has been.
So Dave, what I like about you and so many of the people that are involved, like your audience, is your thinking.
Yes.
So critical thinking is so critical.
Yes.
And part of that is we're in a situation where I was just at the grocery store the other day, and I was talking with one of the clerks, and they were just commenting that they're really concerned about the amount of inflation. I said, well, do you know where this inflation comes from? And it was amazing. The person said, our government's spending too much darn money. That's the reason.
Yep.
And I said, I'll give you an A. An A+. That's
Yep.
exactly right.
Absolutely. No, it's so terrible, folks. I can't. And there is going to be a tomorrow. During the pandemic, when people were saying, "Oh, we're lost," and there was stress and anxiety, I said, "No, there will be a tomorrow. Don't think of this the new normal." They were trying to sell the new normal. Remember that? That was the catchphrase, the new normal.
Yeah.
No, there is not going to be a new normal.
Right.
There's going to be the normal. And the key thing to remember and always keep in mind: we're all Canadians. We're all Canadians. We're all Canadians with rights. We can't be divided. We can't have individual groups saying, no, you're this, you're that, you're everything. We are Canadians. And we stay united, and we stay united, and there is power in unity. There's power in voice. There's going to be elections. Your money, Bud Light took it in the chin with money.
Yeah.
You decide not to buy Bud Light, and I hope you still don't buy Bud Light, and you understand what's going on. Do you want to come in for that? Do you first? Oh, he's giving me a tip. John wants to come in as the person who ends off the video. Here, come over here by David. And so I want to thank you so much
Thank you
for
so
your
much.
time.
Pleasure to
You
be here.
flew all the way in here
Thank
for
you.
this. Thank you so much for you
Great
being
to have
here
you.
Thank you.
and having a great organization, having people like Conrad Black helping out the NCI and everything you guys do. I'm in awe. I love the books that are coming out, which I'm going to get some copies and give some out to our people here.
You bet.
Share this out, and I will take everybody who shared. I'll put your name in for a Denny's gift card. I'm going to give out 3 Denny's gift cards because Denny's is always fantastic for us. I enjoy them. Yeah, they advertise in the magazine too. But, and I love Denny's. I eat at Denny's. I know what I get from Denny's, right?
I go there for birthday as well.
Yes, exactly. Oh,
Among
it's your
other
birthday
times.
today, I think.
Not today.
So, is there anything else to close off that you can think of?
Thank you so much, Dave, for all your leadership, and just encourage people to keep the faith and speak up.
www.fcpp.org.
I will put that down there. You got to visit it, folks. And hey, if you want to donate to something that really matters, that really matters. You're donating to your kids, your grandkids, your great-grandchildren, because you're joining the fight and you're putting your money in the right effort. I always tell everybody, I'm a big person, say at Christmas time that if they want to give money, give it to the Salvation Army. Because Salvation Army really cares. It's a volunteer organization, stuff, because there's so many out there that get rich. But so, thank you so much.
Thank you.
John wants to tell everybody something.
We'd rather hear from you than about you.
Live, right here.
From Canadian Trucking Magazine.
And who loves them, John?
We do.
We love you.
Wow.
Love each other. Love is what saves a world. Love makes a world go around. And there is love in your heart, love in your mind, and but remember, always the truth. Difference between strength and weakness is the difference between kindness, but not being weakness. So take care, everybody. And from all of us here, 1, 2, 3, keep on trucking.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I'll read all the comments tonight.